Alright, first side of the notes, we are going to prove and apply theorems about perpendicular lines. Vocabulary. A perpendicular bisector is a line perpendicular to a segment at the segment's midpoint. Again, if you got to pause to get this stuff down, pause it. Distance from a point to a line. It is the length of the perpendicular segment from the point to a line. Something else we need to know. The shortest segment from a point to a line is a line perpendicular to the line. Okay, so let's say I'm going from, I got down below. This is an example. Alright, right here. Notice in this picture, I've got segment EG, I've got this point E, and then I have line FH. If I'm walking from E, start at point E, and I'm walking towards line FH, I can go this way, EF, I can go EG, or I can walk EH. What this top part meant was that the shortest distance, the shortest segment from E to line FG is a segment that is perpendicular to line FH. That's what that's saying. So now let's look at this picture, just see what it says. Name the shortest segment from E to FH. Well, it's got to be perpendicular. So if I start at E and I go towards FH, the shortest distance is the segment that is perpendicular to FH. So EG is the shortest. Alright, next one. Write and solve an inequality for x. So here's x plus 3 is the length of segment EG. Well, okay, now ask yourself, which segment is longer? We shouldn't be able to see that segment FE is bigger, is longer than segment EG. How do I know that? Because segment EG is the shortest distance from E to FH. So FE, that distance has to be greater than EG. Substitute in, how long is FE? FE is 10, and EG is x plus 3. So 10 has to be greater than x plus 3. Subtract 3 from both sides, and you get 7 is greater than x. That's what it asks me to do. Write and solve an inequality. So now do it again. Pause it. Think about what is you're being asked for. Hopefully you see that the shortest segment from A to line BC is AP because it's perpendicular. I could have gone AC or AB or AP, but the shortest path is AP. So now if I'm going to write an inequality, CA is greater than AP because it's not perpendicular. AP is the shortest distance. How long is CA? CA is x minus 8. How long is AP? It's 12. Add 8 to both sides and you'll get x is greater than 20. Alright, bottom part. If two intersecting lines form a linear pair of congruent angles, then the lines are perpendicular. So there's my linear pair. These little arcs, if that's got one arc and that's got an arc, it's telling me that angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. Well, if they're congruent and they're a linear pair, that means they both have to be 90 degrees. So if they're both 90 degrees, then L is perpendicular to M. Okay? Perpendicular transversal. In a plane, if a transversal is perpendicular to one of two parallel lines, then it's also perpendicular to the other. So notice, this picture's not telling me that Q is perpendicular to N. But the picture tells me that M and N are parallel, the double row of arrows, and Q is perpendicular to M. But if M and N are parallel and Q is perpendicular to M, my conclusion is then that Q is also perpendicular to N. Last set, if two copendar lines are perpendicular to the same line, then the two lines are parallel to each other. So both R and S are perpendicular to line T. So my conclusion is that R is parallel to S. Flip it over. Again, try on your own first before you see my answers. And now let's talk. So if I'm given that angle 1 is equal, the measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 2, my conclusion is that M and P are perpendicular. If I'm told that the measure of angle 2 equals 90 and the measure of angle 3 equals 90, that means both these are 90 degree angles, my conclusion, M parallel to N. And if I'm told that the measure of angle 2 is equal to 90 and M is parallel to N, then I know that P is perpendicular to N. You just think about them. Think about what it is that we're saying and why those are true. Next sheet of notes. Talking about M. M means slope. We just did a little bit of math here. I'm going to skip this. Again, hopefully we can all do that. I'm going to number 5. All we were doing was doing the subtraction. I'm going to skip all the way to 5. What is the formula for finding slope between 2 points? If I have 2 points, slope, which is M, means y2 minus y1. Subtracted 2 y's on top, subtracted 2 x's on the bottom. This is an important formula. You'll have it on star. You don't have to memorize it, but be familiar with it. Objective, we're going to find the slope of a line. We're also going to use slopes to identify parallel and perpendicular lines. What does this one say? Find the slope here of line AB. What is the slope of line AB? We've got to know that a horizontal line, the slope is always equal to 0. If I'm given a graph, I can use the graph to find slope. From A to C, just count. How far do I go down from A to C? I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I went down 5. And I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember from Algebra 1, slope is just rise over run. So I went down 5, I ran 6. And my line is pointing down, so it's minus 5 over 6. AD, we've got to remember a line, a vertical line, going straight up and down.
Esmeralda Flores, please come to the main office. Esmeralda Flores, come to the main office.
My slope is undefined. Vertical line, slope is undefined. And from C to D, I go up 1, and I go over 6, up 1, over 6. Rise, over, run. Right now, this is an important part. It gives me 2 points, and I have to find the slope between them. Here's my formula. I went in here and I called this one point 1. So that makes that x1 and that makes that y1. If this is point 2, that's x2 and that's y2. And then we just plug in y2 minus y1 on top, x2 minus x1 on the bottom gives me minus 2 over minus 1, which is just 2. This is just plug and chug. Label your points and then plug in accordingly. This is a good question. Gives me the graph. Gives me this point. Gives me this point. I labeled my points here. I called the 7, 455. I called that x1, y1. The 4, 260. I called x2, y2. Then I just plugged in. Y2 minus y1. X2 minus x1. Minus 195 over minus 3 gives me 65. That's my slope. Think about, it says interpret also. Think about what this 65 means. What does it mean? I'll ask you that next time I see you. What does that mean in this problem? Parallel lines theorem. This is very, very important. We got to get this part down. 2 non-vertical lines are parallel if and only if they have the same slope. So if I have 2 lines and they have the same slope, we know that those 2 lines are parallel. Perpendicular. 2 non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if the product of their slopes is -1. So I've got 2 lines. If I know their slopes and I multiply them together and it gives me a -1, my lines are perpendicular. If they're the same, my slopes, then my lines are parallel. So do me a favor, try doing these last 3. Use the formula, try to figure out what the slopes are of each one of those lines and then compare. Pause, unpause, here we go. I'm going to uncover all my answers. There's all my work. It's a lot of work, but it's not difficult work. So I got the slope of BC, here's BC. Slope of line BC is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, 4 over 2, 2. Slope of DE, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 gives me 10 over 5, which is 2. Notice my slopes are the same. So therefore, my lines are parallel. I'm going to breeze over this, but make sure you understand where this is coming from. Slope of line MN, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 gives me minus 2 over 4, or minus 1/2. Okay, slope of line ST, minus 5 minus 1 over 1 minus 4 gives me minus 6 over minus 3, which equals to 2. These are my two slopes. What happens if I multiply minus 1/2 and 2? It gives me -1. So therefore my lines are perpendicular. Last one, slope of KL, -3 minus 4 over -2 minus -4. It's -7 over 2. Slope of MN, -1 minus 1 over -5 minus 3 equals -2 over -8, which equals 1 over 4. Not parallel, not perpendicular. A lot of work going on right here. I do understand that, but it's just simple adding and subtracting. We're just doing this formula right here. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That when you're given 2 points and you're asked to find the slope, that's how we do it.